Welcome back. We're going to continue on with our basic GUI series right here. We're going to work on how we can actually add some interactivity to our GUI app that we've made. So last time, again, we made it so we can have this cute little app right here. It has a My Window app. It has a cute little screen that's pink or magenta. Wonderful stuff. But we want to add some functionality to that. And again, as we go along with this, we're going to make sure that every single step as we work along has a compilable state. So as you have to take a pause or work with it, it'll still be at a good spot to go from there. Now, the first thing we have to do when we're talking about adding some interactivity is we need to make sure we make it so we can access the components we're working with. And so in Java, that means we have to add some imports. So I have my imports already right here for Swing JPanel, the demo controller, and the color. We have to add a couple more imports so we can have that. In this Swing group, we're going to add an import for the J button. So import, and then javax.swing.jbutton. And you'll notice that everything in Swingland has a J as a prefix. We'll talk about that some other time. But basically, everything we're working with in Swingland starts with J. It's a nice little prefix. You can know that you're actually talking about a Swing component. Then we also are going to add, inside the import section, we're going to add a couple imports that handle the functionality of working with interaction. Those come from the older version of Java's GUI model, which is the AWT or Abstract Windowing Toolkit. And so we're going to add the action listener and the action event components as well. So we import, and then java.awt.event.action listener, and import java.awt.event.actionEvent. Now notice that these are a 3 levels deep thing, so you want to make sure when you're talking about this, you don't import something incorrectly. It's not java.ap.actionListener, it's java.awt.event.actionListener and .actionEvent. And we'll talk more about that as we go through as well. So now we have the imports we need. Again, they're still yellow underlined because we haven't actually worked with them yet, but we'll take care of that in just a few short minutes. So we have our imports done. The next section we have to do is go inside our data member section. We're going to add a button that we can work with. And so we make a private button. And it's a J button, remember, because that's what we always work with. And I'm going to call it demo button because, again, I'm Mr. Boring and I like to give things just a quick little name that reflects what it is and what it does. And this is a demonstration button, so that's what we're working with. Now that we have a data member, we have to initialize it. We'll continue initializing our process after we initialize our local data member for the controller from the parameter. So I'll just go right here and do this .demo button equals new J button. And the JButton constructor takes as a parameter the string you want to have inside the button itself. And so I'm going to be really creative, and as my string contents, click me. Exclamation point because it's fun. We have fun. Exclamation points are nice. So now I have a button that's on there. Now if I simply just run my app right now and hit play, it's got a button, but guess what? It won't show up because I haven't added the button. Anytime we have a component we want to work with, we have to make sure we add it. And again, we have that lovely helper method we've already started right here with setup panel that handles all that component stuff. We talked about that last time. So now that I've set my size and my background, I'm going to go down a bit here. I'm going to do this .add. And then I pass as a parameter the button I'm putting in this case, demo button. And so now I'm adding a demo button to that. And I hit play. And I now have this great app. It says click me, and I click it. And it doesn't do anything. But we have functional code. It works every single time. And again, that's one of the processes we want to make sure we do is we always have functional code as we go along with this. So now that we've got that, let's go ahead and let's make it a little bit funky. Let's give it some cool features and make it do a lot more. So I'm going to go ahead and go back over here. I'm going to go back inside JPanel. That's where everything's happening for this entire project. I'm going to go down below my setup panel. I'm going to just add a new method. It's a private color method, and it's going to be called create random color. And this is because I like making colorful apps. I think it's a lot of fun to do that. And then we see we have an underscore right here of redness because we haven't actually created a valid value. So I'm going to say color random equals null and return random. Because again, we always want to have a valid bit of code every time we step through this. And so that first bit right there, we have now a valid bit of code. It's a null color, but hey, that's okay to start off. And we're just going to make a quick random color. We've done this in other languages before in some of my other videos. In Java, the color is stored as 3 different variables for red, green, and blue, and they're all ints. So we'll just make some random int values happen with this. So we'll have an int red equals, and then we'll do casting and have an int in there, and then parens, again, after that to handle the math that we're working with. We'll do a space, make that really easy to see. And we have math.random, which gives us a number between 0 and 1, not inclusive on the 1. and we'll multiply that by 256, which gives us the maximum possible number of colors. 255 is the maximum value we have for red. So it's 256 values, 0 to 255 is what that range will be. We'll do the same thing on green and blue as well. Now we have to make sure when we do this casting right here that we're doing the parens around the math.random times 256 because math works. And if I just did the int and then math.random, I'd be turning math.random, that double value, into an int, and then that was going to be 0, and times that by 256, which always gives us 0, which isn't very helpful. So int blue equals, and the same thing, int, and then parens, and inside those parens, math.random, and multiply again by 256. Now, if you wanted to make this so it actually pick a different, if you want to make this so it could pick a specific shade of color, like a random purple, random green, you could do some lovely scaling in that to make sure those values itself keep within a range of values. We've done that in some of our other projects in Swift. You could do a fun thing with that with Java as well. But we'll go ahead and make our color. So we'll say random equals new color. And we'll pass it those parameters of red, comma, green, comma, blue. And now we have a random color for that we'll return as needed. Now notice we have that lovely yellow underline of uselessness. We haven't actually done anything with it yet, but that's okay. We'll take care of that. So the first thing we're going to do is, now we've got this right here. It's not going to do anything yet. We're going to add a new helper method. We have to make a new helper method. It's called setupListeners. And the setupListeners method is how I can attach the listeners, the things in Java that listen for an event to happen. And in case of a button, we're listening for a click. So we're going to make that stub method right now. So we go ahead right here and make a private, and it's a void method, and it's called setupListeners. And I have it as a plural because if I have multiple buttons, multiple things, I attach all those listeners in here. And I make sure I call my setupListeners after I call setupPanel in the constructor. And again, I'm always making this code compile, or write so it compiles all the way through, and it's going to be useful and helpful. So we have our setupListeners after setupPanel. And again, we have to make sure we initialize things before we do it. We already saw that right there when we initialized our button before we added it to setupPanel. And then setupListeners, this is where we get a little bit confusing or some weird code. We'll write it first and we'll go from there. So it's going to be demo button dot add action listener. And inside the parameters of that add action listener, we're going to do new action listener, parens, and then some squigs and a semicolon. And inside those squigs, we're going to do public void action performed, parens, and an action event. And I'm going to name that variable click because, well, it is a click. Makes it real easy. So this is the stub for the listener. This actually attaches the listener to it right now. And it makes it so that whenever, when setupListeners gets called, it's going to say demo button. I'm going to add a listener to you. What kind of listener? An action listener. And whenever that listener fires, when it hears something, aka a click, it wants to do the code that's inside this. And so that's what we're going to be working with on that. Now we already made our create random color method, and so what we need to do, we already know how to set the background to magenta. We're going to make it so that whenever I click the button, it's going to change the color as well. So we're going to just call that same method, the set background. And we're going to pass it, instead of color.magenta, we'll call it create random color. And so now I have set background and passing it create random color. I need to make sure that I don't put the this prefix in front of that because we're dealing with an anonymous inner class, which is actually that listener, which we don't want to set the color of because it can't. But we're just calling set background for this existing class we're inside of demo panel. And now that I've got that done, I'm going to hit save. I'm going to hit play. Bring that up. Here's my window app. It starts off magenta just like normal. But now when I click it, look how pretty. I've got great colors happening. This is amazing. And so we can make it so we have a fun interactive app that we can use with Java. We're making it so we can have a button, and we've got it so it does the lovely magic power of changing colors. Great stuff, lots of fun. I highly encourage you to try this at home and do some more work with this. Thanks again, have a great day. Cheers.